time for Voice of Indie. Your hosts today are Beem Weeks, author, producer, and marketing monster for independent multimedia publisher Fresh Ink Group, and Stephen Gies, author, producer, composer, and publisher for Fresh Ink Group.
And good evening, and welcome to the Voice of Indie podcast, show number 19, getting closer to show number 20. I am your host tonight, Beem Weeks, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Stephen Gies. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm getting better. My voice is back a little stronger this week, but I got that brain fog, so we'll work through it, though.
Some people pay good money for brain fog.
Yeah.
We're down here. We had a nice warm sunny day today, but last night it got down to 32 degrees. I got up today, went out and checked on my plants that are out on the deck, and every one of them were giving me the stink eye about leaving them out there when it was so cold last night. But like I say, warm sunny now. It's supposed to be that way for the rest of the week, and then this weekend I'm leaving the area so that I won't be around for next week's show. But for today's show, we're monitoring Twitter right now. So if anybody wants to leave a comment or a question for today's guest, go on over to Twitter and type in your question or your comment and put hashtag Fresh Ink Group in the comment, in the body of the comment, hashtag Fresh Ink Group, and we should be able to see it.
And if you would also like to be part of the show, if you have a question or a comment for tonight's guest, just give us a call at 516-453-9902. Once again, that is 516-453-9902, and we will put you on the air.
So what's the weather like up there?
Well, we're not snowing yet. We had like a light dusting a couple of weeks ago, and that's pretty much been it. Now my sister lives further north, about an hour and a half north of here, and they had a bunch of snow at Thanksgiving. We went up there for Thanksgiving. They had a lot of snow, but we've been kind of warm. I mean, we almost touched 50 today. It was like 47 or 48, I think. So that's odd for December, especially in these parts.
Well, around here, the coots have been flying in from up north, which is a sign that it's definitely wintertime in Alabama. Coots are like little tiny ducks. They're about 2/3 the size of a average duck, and they're black, and they've got a white smudge on their forehead. They're really funny to look at, but they come in here by the thousands in December, and they hang out here all along the shore, eating the weeds and whatnot. And when they get all the weeds eaten, they come up in the yard and start eating the lawn. So sometimes we're not real happy to see them. But we got some good news. Gwen Plano, one of our favorite authors here at Fresh Ink Group, her new book, The Culmination, which is the third book in her Heaven and Earth trilogy, just reached #1 Amazon bestseller status. That's #1 Amazon bestseller. Go, Gwen.
Congratulations, Gwen.
And readers, make sure you check it out. That's The Culmination by Gwen M. Plano.
And if that's not enough, Fresh Ink Group author Larry Landgraf has his Spanish version of his children's book, The Adventures of Ollie the Orangutan, is now out. So if you know children who speak Spanish and would like to get them a nice Christmas gift, this is perfect for that. This is a fun book, and Larry's a skillful writer. So get on over to Amazon or wherever you buy your books and grab a copy.
Today's guest is Dick Farrar, Jr. He's the author of The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant, The History, People, and Stories of CFW Construction.
Dick Farrar, Jr. knows the history and people of Fayetteville, Tennessee, where he lives with his wife, Martha. Not 5 minutes away is where CFW started out on Pioneer Street, 3 minutes from where it ended at 1824 Pulaski Highway. Dick currently manages property, consults with the private sector, writes and enjoys gardening. He is a staunch Mississippi State Bulldog. Martha enjoys cooking and sports, especially SEC football. Dick and Martha are both active members of First Presbyterian Church. They are close to their sons' and daughters' families. Jim Farrar and wife Phyllis live in Birmingham, Alabama with their daughters Mary Catherine and Virginia. Beth and husband Harper Keeler live in Jackson, Mississippi with sons Will and John. As Martha and Dick thoroughly enjoy being grandparents, they wish to note both of their children, plus both of their children's spouses, are all graduates of Mississippi State University.
Go
and now
Bulldogs.
the grandchildren and now the grandchildren are becoming Bulldogs. The author and his wife have always made sure they never take friends for granted. They cherish every single one made along the way. And with that, welcome to the show, Mr. Farrar. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Thank you, Beem, and thank you, Stephen. We're delighted to be your guest.
All right.
And you're in Fayetteville, Tennessee right now.
I'm in Fayetteville, Tennessee right now. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Probably lying low with the virus going around out there.
As best we can. It's been something to deal with, and like we've never seen before. I guess since 1918 with the flu pandemic. We just don't know what around the corner tomorrow. Let's hope this thing gets behind us soon.
Now, you don't remember 1918, do you?
I do not, but I've read about it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit more about Martha. I've had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of times and being able to enjoy having dinner one time with her. She's a delightful woman.
Yes, sir.
What kinds of good things can you say about her?
Well, my wife of 58 years.
Wow.
When we were high school sweethearts, after we graduated from high school, she went to Peabody College in Nashville, Tennessee, which is now a part of Vanderbilt University. 1962, she was Miss Peabody. I went off to Mississippi State University, and somehow, Stephen, over the 4 years, we stayed connected. And then in August of '62, we married, and 2 children later, 4 grandchildren later, we're still together. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Fantastic.
That's wonderful.
I've got a question here. You're a resident of Tennessee. I take it you've grown up there. What led you to Mississippi State?
Why Mississippi State?
Yeah, what led you to Mississippi State rather than a Tennessee Volunteers?
When I was a junior in high school, we had a high school football coaching change, and the head football coach came from Mississippi State University. He graduated in December of '56, I believe, and came to Central High School in Fayetteville, Tennessee in January of '57, and he was my high school football coach my junior and senior year. My senior year, he said, "Dick, where are you planning to go to college?" And I said, "I really haven't settled on any university. I haven't even visited a school." And he said, "Well, why don't you let me take you down to Mississippi State and visit the campus one weekend." That we did. Mississippi State at the time was about 3,000 students, something over 22,000 today. And so I went on a football scholarship tryout up on the recommendation of Coach Barron, and who his classmate at Mississippi State at the time was Bill Dooley. Bill Dooley later became the football coach at Wake Forest in North Carolina, and I think Bill died a couple of years ago. His brother Vince is still living, and of course Vince was a legendary coach at the University of Georgia.
Yeah.
But I did get a full scholarship my beginning of my spring practice of my freshman year, and then Coach Wade Walker came to me one day and he said, "Dick, I would like to have your scholarship to play football at Mississippi State. And I said, "Well, I don't know. I've never been to Mississippi State. I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, I would like to have your scholarship give to someone who can play SEC football. I weighed 170 pounds soaking wet. And he said, in return for that, I'll provide your books and out-of-state tuition, and you can work in the athletic department, and we'll swap out if that's okay with you. Well, that was fine with me because there were All-Americans on the state team by the name of Tom Good, who went on to play for the Baltimore Colts a number of years, and Walter Suggs, who went on to play for the Houston Oilers for a number of years. They were running over me looking for somebody to block. So this is a good trade-off.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Beem, Fayetteville, Tennessee. I was born in 1940, raised in Fayetteville, Tennessee, raised as a farm boy. And my grandfather, Jack, purchased a 200-acre farm here in Lincoln County in 1924 from the Federal Land Bank, moved his family from Lynchburg, Tennessee, which is Jack Daniels country.
Jack Daniels, yeah.
And Jack Daniel country. And by the way, when my grandfather and grandmother married, Jack Daniel gave them a full setting of china as a wedding gift.
Cool.
After 1924, farming for a few years, my grandfather died suddenly on August 28th, 1942. And by the way, that's our wedding anniversary, Martha and I's wedding anniversary, August 28th, 1962. It wasn't planned that way, but that's just the way it worked out. And my father had worked on the farm until 1938. From 1924, my father was born in 1917 and moved to the land bank farm in 1924 and farmed until 1938. And had taken the job with a wholesale food distributor. But when my grandfather died, my father and mother, along with me, moved back to the family farm out on Mimosa Road here in Fayetteville. My earliest memories of farm life was gathering eggs and feeding the chickens. And we had 50 or so cows to milk, 2 teams of mules, horses, sheep, hogs, grew corn, tobacco, sorghum, wheat, oats, and hay. My father grew the farm to 400 acres. And from 42 to 1950, farming was our livelihood. We raised our own beef, pork, and had all the fried chicken we could eat anytime we wanted it. And when I wouldn't take anything for growing up on the farm. But then things began to change in 1950 when my mother's first cousin approached my father about joining him as a partner in the utility construction business. And from that point on is the story of the book. And that it's documented from there on. My father, Bill Carter, who was the C in CFW, had come back from World War II and was a civil engineering professor at the University of Tennessee from 1945 until about 1947-48. And he came back here and went to work for a local contractor and as a superintendent and built the local sewer treatment plant. And following that, he decided he wanted to have his own company, so he went into business with a lumber supply dealer here by the name of Mr. Betty Williams, who was a W in CFW, and started building houses in a west of town here in an area called Radio City. Well, no sooner than they started building houses, got a couple completed, Mr. Carter went to the city of Fayetteville administrator and said, when are you all going to start putting in the water and sewer for this subdivision? And the city administrator said, what do you mean we, Mr. Carter? Said, that's your job. And Mr. Carter had completely overlooked that facet of the construction, and so he approached my father, whom they were well acquainted, and my father had no construction experience whatsoever. but he was well known for working men and working them firmly and fairly. And Mr. Carter said, Dick, I know you don't know the construction business, but if you're willing to work people firmly and fairly, as you've been known to do, we can make this work. So they formed a company called Carter Farrar Construction Company, and that was a utility construction company. And then it was Carter Williams building the houses and Carter Farrar putting in the water sewer. And then in 1951, there was a huge project that was Carter Farrar and Carter Williams were successful in bidding, and that was the General Shoe Factory here in Fayetteville, which was a humongous building, mostly concrete construction. And water, sewer, and all had to be run to the facility. So in 1951, Carter Williams, Carter Farrar merged into Carter Farrar Williams Construction Company. And then in 1952, my father and Mr. Carter and Mr. Carter's brother, Lewis Carter, bought Mr. Williams' interest. And at that time, the name had been chartered at the state of Tennessee, and the name stuck, CFW Construction Company. And my first job with construction was the summer of 1951. I was 11 years old, and I was the water boy at the General Shoe plant. I had a 5-gallon Igloo cooler strapped to my back, and I would walk around with solo cups and to all the workmen and give them a cold drink of water. And my mother said one day, why don't we sell sandwiches to some of the workers? So she started fixing peanut butter and jelly and pimento cheese and things like that. And in the hot summer, it didn't go over so well. And she said, well, why don't we try country ham sandwiches?
Ooh.
And I said, Mother, that'll be fine. And Dad, the farming operation, we killed our own hogs and cured our own hams and things like that, our own pork. And there were hams hanging up in the smokehouse. And Mother said, go get me a ham and we'll have country ham sandwiches. Well, that went on, I guess, for a month or 6 weeks, and I was really making money. Mother was making the sandwiches. I was selling them. Dad was furnishing the meat, and I was putting the money in my pocket. And I was being paid $5 a week as a water boy, and I was making about $18 a week selling sandwiches. So one day Dad came in and wanted to check the smokehouse to see how his hams were curing, and he missed about 3 hams and said to Mother, said, Robbie, what's going on? What's happening with my hams? And she said, Dick, I thought you knew Dickie was selling country ham sandwiches at the shoe plant. And he said, no, I didn't know that. But he said, from now on, we're not going to be selling country ham sandwiches. So my income from country hams dried up pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, and Anne Marie Martin, who edited the book, The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant, and that country ham story was in the first chapter. And she used that as the opening, and then which led into the fall of CFW. Interestingly, I ran into a lady that worked for the company here about 2 weeks ago, and she said, you don't remember me, do you, Mr. Dick? And I said, certainly I do, Dorothy. I remember you very well. And she said, I want one of your books. And she said, would you mind selling it to me at half price? I said, Dorothy, I just haven't been doing that, and I'd rather not. I said, why would you want it at half price? She said, well, I only wanted to read about the rise. I didn't want to read about the fall, so I just wanted to read half the book. So,
that's a good thing.
Dorothy's a doll.
Yeah. Now the book
but
is.
Anyway,
The book is a wealth of photos, and it's just historical things going all the way back to that time. I'd like to have seen some shots of 11-year-old Dickie down there selling his sandwiches, but he didn't quite get that far back on the photos.
That's right. Sure didn't. But it's been an interesting ride. I enjoyed the book, writing the book. It was a struggle. I'm not into computerization, maybe like a John Meacham or John Grisham. By the way, John Grisham's a Mississippi State graduate.
Yes, he is.
But anyway, I just wrote it out longhand, sat here many nights just going through research and writing and rewriting. And there's Janie McNeil, a classmate of mine, high school classmate of mine. She was Janie Hopkins in high school. But she typed the entire book, manuscript for me. And then we went through several corrections, and I found a lady by the name of Anne Marie Martin in Huntsville, Alabama, that was an editor, and we met, and she agreed to take on the job of editing the book. And Lordy mercy, the getting it, how to get it published, how to get it printed, it was just a tackle for me, and not being in the business, and Marie Martin didn't know that much about the publishing side of the book. But I happened to receive a book from a friend of mine that was a former Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association executive director, and he knew I enjoyed high school football, and he gave me a book called 8 Hateful Miles by Stephen Hargis, who wrote for the course editor for the Chattanooga Free Press. And I read the book, and then I looked over in the back of the book, and lo and behold, there was this Fresh Ink Group hit me right in the face. Independent publisher, hardcover, soft covers. And it just went on, and I thought, well, I need to call that place. So I called and got into touch with a fellow by the name of Stephen Gies, and I said, could we meet and talk? And he said, this was on a Friday. And I thought, well, this big publishing company, they're probably going to be a month out before they can even meet. And Stephen said, well, how about tomorrow? Can we meet in Huntsville, Alabama? And I said, well, certainly. So I called Anne Marie, and we met Stephen in Huntsville, Alabama. And really the rest is in history, because I just placed it in his hands, and it was just a cakewalk from there on. And I really enjoyed working with the Fresh Ink Group all the way through.
Well, thank you. Now, we have a commercial for the book. Before we play the commercial, I want to remind listeners, if you want to call in and talk to Dick, the number's 516-453-9902, or you can go to Twitter and use hashtag Fresh Ink Group. So how about it, Beem? You want to play that commercial?
All right.
Determined to bring utilities and small building construction to rural areas, William R. Carter joined with Dick Farrar and John Williams to form the CFW Construction Company in Fayetteville, Tennessee in 1952. Named for the partners, CFW expanded into building plants, roads, tunnels, bridges, and more. Within 40 years, the company grew to 5 offices, 14 subsidiaries, 1,000 pieces of equipment, and a proud workforce of more than 1,500 across a dozen states. Then came the scandals. By the end of the 20th century, CFW was gone, and the lives of everybody had changed. Dick Farrar's son was there for the best and the worst. He knows the history and people of Fayetteville, Tennessee, where he lives with his wife not 5 minutes from where CFW started on Pioneer Street, and 3 minutes from where it ended at 1824 Pulaski Highway. Now, he's written the definitive history, not just about a company, but a region and its people. With nearly 100 restored photos, most in color, Farrar Jr. tells the true story, naming names and documenting the details. Get your copy now and grab extras as gifts, in hardcover with dust jacket, or maybe a softcover trade edition. It's also available in all the ebook formats worldwide, including Nook, Kindle, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and more. The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant is a keepsake, a historical record, the chronicle of an era, a compelling story told by the man at its center at the end. The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant by Dick Farrar, Jr. is proudly published by Fresh Ink Group.
And we are live tonight with author Dick Farrar, Jr., author of The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant. And again, listeners, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to call in at 516-453-9902. Once again, that is 516-453-9902. And I do see we have a couple of comments on Twitter. These are both from Verwayne Greenhoe. Stephen, when you spoke about it being a high of 32 or a low of 32, he said we had a high of 32, but it was 22 overnight. And then he sent a picture. He says, we have a few coots up here in the UP. This isn't my best shot, but this one was out at Natalie State Campground in Dollarville, in the Dollarville flood zone. About a mile from my place. So thanks for sharing that, Verwayne, and thanks for tuning in again tonight.
So, Dick, it seems that nobody else really could have written this book. I mean, you're the person who was in there closest. You're the person who was actually running CFW for a while. It was your family history. It was the history of the people in the town where you live. I mean, did you almost feel like an obligation at one point that somebody needed to get this story down and put it out there so that posterity will be able to read about this?
Stephen, that's a very, very good question. I looked around. We had lost my good friend Jack Kelso, who was vice president of CFW. We had lost my father, Bill Carter. We had lost the vice president, Lewis Carter, Bill Carter. Several of the older superintendents had passed away. And I thought at one point, you know, this is a good story. It needs to be documented. And we managed to do that over time. I think the book came out in March of 2019 and probably started on it in 15 or 16. My father had saved a lot of records, information. I had a lot of information passed on to me by Mr. Carter, a great friend of mine and great mentor, Fred Young, Georgia Tech civil engineering graduate I worked with for 20 years. Had some information. I met with him in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, at the start of writing the book and asked for his input, and he brought 2 or 3 files of information. He said, here, take these and use them as you see fit. So, and the pictures I'd collected from here and there really turned out well, I think, helped to make the book. It was just Mike Freeland and his wife, Ellen, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Mike was kind of a shock stick of Fayetteville, Lincoln County for a number of years before he moved to Hopkinsville. He had a radio station here, and Mike encouraged me. Mike had written 2 or 3 books, and he said, Dick, you need to write the CFW story. I said, oh, Mike, I can't do that. I'm not a writer. And he said, Dick, get to writing. And the last time I saw Mike, he passed away at 90 years old. A couple of years ago, I walked out the door, and the last thing he said to me was, Dick, get to writing. So with that, I came back and put pen to paper and just had a terrible time of organizing it. And I have to give a lot of credit to Anne Marie Martin for helping me put it in a form. And over the years, I've gotten, some reviews, for example, like the one I got from a fellow by the name of John Hatcher in Carlotta, California. Dick, enjoyed the read. One did not have to know the characters to enjoy the CFW story. I particularly enjoyed chapters 19 and 20. The research that you put into chapter 20 was phenomenal. The last paragraph of chapter 20 was mind-boggling. Well, chapter 20, there are about 5 stories in the book that where yours truly almost met disaster. But the chapter 20 was the plane crash of CFW in November of 1979, I believe, November 1st. A group of men had boarded MU-2, Mitsubishi MU-2 to fly to Houston, Texas that morning, about 5:30, leaving the Fayetteville airport. And the men on the plane had different missions. We had a paving operation in Houston. We had a telephone operation in Houston. And we had a building operation in Houston. So we landed at the Hobby Airport that morning, and everybody went to a different direction. And we agreed to meet back there at a certain time. And there were 2 ladies that worked for the State Department of Tennessee that were out there visiting relatives that knew the plane was going to be there at a certain date and wondered if they could hitch a ride back home. Well, as it worked out, there was room on the plane for the 2 ladies. And those of us that were on the plane boarded to head back to Fayetteville. And one of the men was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. But anyway, I was on the plane, and I had to stop in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to meet our project manager there about some work. And he and his wife wanted to take a vacation to Colorado to go skiing, and I had told him that I would take his place if indeed he and his wife wanted to take the vacation, but if he didn't, they decided not to, I'd get on the plane and come on home. So we landed at the Baton Rouge airport and met the project manager there, and he said, Mr. Farrar, if you don't mind, Rhonda and I would like to take a vacation. And I said, okay. I said, let me get my bag and my briefcase, and I'll tell the plane to go ahead. Well, that night I went to the hotel Holiday Inn there close by airport, and the next morning the phone rang early about 6 o'clock, and it was my wife, and she said, are you okay? And I said, yes, I'm fine. Why? She said, did you not hear about the plane crash? I thought she was talking about some airline crash. I said, no. She said, CFW's plane crashed last night, letting the 2 girls that were on the plane off in Nashville, Tennessee, and hit the high power lines coming in from the north. And all 5 on board were killed. And all I could do was hang up the phone. But that and 4 or 5 other incidents were recorded in the book. And it's not about me. The book is about the people.
All of the people.
You know, these people in the utility construction lived in Fayetteville, Tennessee for the most part. And CFW worked in 13, 14 states. And these people would get on the plane on Sunday afternoon and go back to their work or get in their construction pickup truck, go back to their base of work, whether it be Georgia or Alabama or wherever. They come home on Friday night, get a home-cooked meal or 2 on Saturday and Sunday, and repeat the process the next week, 52 weeks a year. And, you know, it tore a lot of families. Admittedly, there were divorces and things that just where the families didn't travel with the project managers and superintendents to all these different jobs. But it was a tough life. but it was a rewarding life because you get into the field operations and you complete a project and you sell it and bring the money home, and it was tough, but it was rewarding.
Now, a lot of this is you're recounting things that you're very familiar with or that you were even a part of. In the process of talking to people, gathering the information, getting the photos together, did you learn some things that you didn't already know about the history of CFW? Any surprises, or fill in some blanks that you weren't aware of?
Oh, the lawsuits. There were lawsuits over the years. We won a few and we lost a few. That contributed to the fall. You know, when you have a $2 million lawsuit or $100,000 lawsuit, you lose. It hurts. But the bid rigging suits really were. Yeah, I think they were eye-opening to me when I really got into some of the judgments. And then and once you kind of tap that source, you know, the water runs deep. How deep is it? One door opens another door, and then before you know it, there's just more people involved than really you ever knew about. But I think all in all that we figured that the bid rigging which was the fall, cost the company something like $25 million in fines, judgments, things like that over the years. It was about an 8 or 9 year period there.
So just to clarify, why don't you briefly tell our listeners about the investigation and what the result was, how that came about?
Well, interesting. Most of the people have passed on, but this the antitrust laws. It wasn't the Bureau of Investigation. It was Federal Justice Department. Started out in Indiana, and they convicted a couple of contractors there. But contractors said, you know, if you really want to open the doors to bid rigging, go down to Tennessee. Well, the officers came into Shelbyville, Tennessee, and there's a firm there by the name of Tillett Brothers Construction Company. And but good friends. We'd worked with them over the years, and good people. But anyway, one of the people there said, well, if you really want the kingpin, go down to Fayetteville, Tennessee, and visit with Mr. Carter. Well, Mr. Carter was, at one time, he was president of the American Road Builders Association, and he had served a term or two as the president of Tennessee Road Builders Association. So to call him the kingpin, I don't think he ever fit that mold. But people would look to him. Stephen, if I had a job, if we had a paving job in Fayetteville, Tennessee, the other contractors would say, okay, Mr. Carter, it's your territory. Tell me what I need to bid to stay out of your way. And if you come into my territory, I'll tell you what you need to be to stay out of my way. Well, this it was going on, and Mr. Carter, when he came into business in 1950, it was happening in the 40s and 30s and 40s and 50s. It was just a way of life for construction, and to set bids up. And I said it in the book. I don't think that, for the life of me, I know that the state of Tennessee Department of Transportation and the state of Kentucky Department of Transportation, the state of Alabama Department of Transportation, wherever, these people knew bid rigging was going on. because once you were the successful bidder on a project, it wouldn't take 2 days before the Commissioner of Transportation would call and say, congratulations on your bid. We think you got a good bid. By the way, we got an election coming up. Would you mind contributing $3,000, $5,000 to the governor's election or senatorial election or something like that? And it was just their way of politicking to keep the wheels turning so they could keep their people in office. And they thieved off the construction industry by and large over the years. And but when it came to when the chips were down, they weren't anywhere to be found.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now that precipitated the company going under?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. They had to sell it. At one time, CFW was in the top 100 largest equipment owners in the United States. To make this story just a little more palatable, my father put $7,000 into the company, utility company, in 1949 or 50. Mr. Carter put $7,000 into it, so they started out with basically a $14,000 investment. And the same thing with the Carter-Williams Company, about $14,000, and then the merger in 51, I think. But anyway, in 1951, with about a $28,000 investment, had turned into, I think CFW was in the top 75 volume contractors in the United States. With from 1950 to 1976, I think the volume was something like $80 million annually. So
wow.
It was pretty good growth, and but CFW was the umbrella company was Carter Limited, and then under that umbrella they had CFW Construction Company, Cypress Construction Company, Tennessee Paving Construction Company, Constructors Incorporated, which was the building arm, and 3 or 4 other smaller companies. But there were about 8 companies under the Carter Limited umbrella.
So the Justice Department went after CFW. Basically, it was common practice in the entire construction industry, but they got targeted. Did anybody wind up going to prison over that?
Yes, sir. I should have. Mr. Carter went to prison, I believe it was 1980. I think it was for a 6-month term. When the Justice Department got into South Carolina, they began to look into the construction files in different offices over there, and they found CFW's name in a file there on a water sewer contract, I think in Beaufort, South Carolina. And they called Mr. Carter again to the courtrooms, and the attorney said, you've already convicted him in Tennessee, and you said that once he was convicted in Tennessee, you would not bring him into the courtroom ever again. And the judge was reminded of that, and he honored that. But yet it was a joint venture there in South Carolina on the water sewer project, and Mr. Fred Young, our vice president, and the vice president of the joint venture company also went to prison, I think, for about 3 months, 90 days. Then with a suspended sentence, I think maybe for another 6 months or so. I don't know for sure. But we had, I think, in Tennessee, there were 13 construction executives that went to prison over bid rigging. And these weren't just field people, they were the owners of the company.
Wow, I don't even remember that scandal. So
I did get a nice review from, if I may, this one comes from Greg Hall, who is the Dean of Architecture and Design at Mississippi State University. Thank you so much for the copy of your book. It is an incredible history and legacy, and it provides important insights into the construction industry. Another comes from former Governor Winfield Dunn, who is in his own right, Governor Dunn, I think, was elected governor in 1970, and he was the first Republican governor elected in over 50 years in the state of Tennessee. And good friend, he said, "Let me congratulate you on climbing a tall mountain and the completion of your fine book. I am so impressed with your details of an outstanding collection of individuals who created an enormous success that benefited so many people and places." And also Eugene Ham from Greenville, Mississippi. "I read, marked, and inwardly digested the rise and fall of a construction giant. How you rode hard over so much specific historical data, organized it in clear prose, and gave us readers access leaves me deeply impressed." And these are from my son and this compliments you, Stephen, from my son in Birmingham. "First, I love the book jacket, Sun Setting on Idle Equipment. Second, the title, The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant, nails the text of the book." And then from Jackson, Mississippi, "Winter, I felt the cover design was brilliant and truly illustrated the contents of the book. I thought it was very inviting to your target audience and makes a statement about what the purchaser might expect to glean from reading the book. Great research." And then this one from Pensacola, Florida. "This book documents a history that would otherwise have been lost had not the author taken it up on himself to record it." That comes from Shelby Owens Brewer, who was a longtime executive secretary to Mr. Carter.
Great reviews.
And like that last one said, that this history would have been lost. And I think that's what is so important about books like the book that you've written, is that it actually records history and it's there for the ages now. It'll be, decades down the road, it'll still be out there and still be available. Now that the book is done, what are some of the ways that you've marketed the book?
Good question, Beem. We have a local bookstore here, the Book Inn. The owner is Pam Howell, a lovely lady, very accommodating.
She is. Very.
And placed several of boxes of my books in her store on consignment. And she has been so gracious and so helpful there. I have spoken before civic clubs about the book around the surrounding area, Scottsboro, Alabama, Nashville, Lewisburg. During the host of Christmas Past last year, when we had 25 or 30,000 visitors, I put up a little card table around the square and signed books and sold books there. So it's and then I filled a lot of orders. I just sent out a lot of flyers to different people, different friends, and they've sent in a check. I signed the book, sent them a copy.
Yeah, I'd like to give
anyone out there that would like a signed copy, the hardbacks are $40. And I'll be glad to sign a copy to anyone who would send a check to P.O. Box 505, Fayetteville, Tennessee, Dick Farrar, Farrar. The zip code is 37334. Or they can give me a call on my cell phone at 993-8187 and give me the information over the phone, and I'll be glad to accommodate them that way.
And listeners, if you forgot all of that, there's a contact form at freshinkgroup.com. Just get over there and send us a note. Tell us what you're trying to do. We'll hook you up with Mr. Farrar and make sure that you get what you're after.
Yes, indeed. So tell us about Slawburger Days.
Slawburger Days. Lee McAllister, the Slawburger Godfather, they call him. Lee owns what we call the Honey's Poo Room there, and it came down through his family. I think his grandfather started the Poo Room back in the 30s, and then his father ran it, passed away, and then Lee has taken it over. And Lee is kind of the kingpin, I guess you might say, of the Fayetteville Square, and he keeps things going. He's very, very community-oriented, and so on the Slawburger Festival Day, he has a Slawburger eating contest, and he lines these people up. The courthouse, his restaurant, we used to call it Honey's Poo Room. It's Honey's Restaurant now. But right across the street is the courthouse, and he sets up tables on the courthouse lawn for people that want to enter the eating contest. And I can't tell you how many Slawburgers the champions have eaten the last 2 or 3 years. And I don't know that there's been a repeat champion either. But Lee gets a big kick out of that, and it is not only just there are 2 places here that are really known for their Slawburgers, and it's nothing but about a 6-ounce piece of hamburger meat and with bun and slaw recipe that's out of this world.
It's excellent.
It is excellent, and I know my grandchildren come in. The first thing they want to do is go to a Poo Room for a Slawburger. So they are good, and it's not only just it brings a lot of people in for shopping around the city of Fayetteville, and we're a community of about. The county is about 34,000 people. The city is about 7,000 people. And the city county people all get along very well. I would say that we have Frito-Lay plant here that employs about 1,500 people. But if you ask me what Fayetteville's largest industry is, I would say it has to be construction, probably has the greatest impact on our economy. Probably the next, and agriculture, and I'm tying the logging operation in with that, hardwood logging operation. Agriculture industry have a lot of grain farmers that do real well. Beef cattle, we used to be the number 1 beef cattle producing county in the state, but I think we've fallen behind now. We're still in the top 5. But nice little community, and CFW was a kind of a stalwart in the construction industry in the 50s and 60s, and did a lot of work here and provided a lot of jobs. I think at the height of the Carter Limited operation, we had about 2,200 people on the payroll. That would have been in 75, 76, 77, somewhere in there. And we estimated that over 30,000 people over the years drew a check from CFW. Wow.
That's a good-sized company there. We do have a comment on Twitter here from Verwayne Greenhow. He says, I haven't bought your book yet, but I will. And he said, I think I remember the plane crash, but not the legal case. I'm a history buff, so I enjoy reading about it. Well, you'll enjoy this book, Verwayne.
Full of history. So why don't we take a real quick break and play one more commercial before we come back and finish up with Dick Farrar, the author of The Rise and Fall of a Construction Giant. This is 8 Hateful Miles, the book Dick was talking about earlier by author Stephen Hargis.
In the heart of the Bible Belt, only one thing could drive folks to set aside the good Lord's commandment to love thy neighbor. One of the state's longest and most combative high school football rivalries. Located about 25 miles west of Chattanooga, hard by the Alabama state line, and in an area with more pride than prosperity, the level of football achievements at Marion County and South Pittsburgh, separated by just 8 miles, has fueled the rivalry's intensity for nearly a century. South Pittsburgh is the only school in the state that has played for a state championship in all 6 decades that Tennessee has held a playoff system, while Marion County once reeled off a streak of 56-1 that included 4 state titles in 6 years. Having seen every game since the mid-1970s, first as a student at South Pittsburgh, then as a Chattanooga sports writer since 1990, Stephen Hargis brings a unique perspective to Tennessee's most quarrelsome prep football rivalry. He brings every title run to life with a mixture of history, humor, and nearly 200 color photos. He takes you right into the locker rooms as coaches prepare for each big game and onto the sidelines to hear the trash talking between players. Stephen brings to life the ultra-competitive characters on both sides as he weaves the heartfelt personal stories of coaches, players, and supporters from the community who give the colorful rivalry so much of its energy. Proximity and pride are what energize the atmosphere of the games. Published by Fresh Ink Group, 8 Hateful Miles can be yours now as a keepsake dust-jacketed hardcover, trade paperback, and all e-books worldwide. Familiarity truly does breed contempt. Across 8 Hateful Miles.
And there you go. Get over to Amazon and grab a copy of that one, too. That's a good book.
I need to talk to Steve, and I will. Our Fayetteville City Tigers played South Pittsburgh last Friday afternoon in Cookeville, Tennessee, in the TSSAA Championship 1A game, and we defeated South Pittsburgh 20-14.
Ooh.
Wow.
It was a game for the ages, I guarantee you. So I think South Pittsburgh had been to the TSSAA tournament 38 times. And our Fayetteville Tigers had been twice. So,
wow.
That was a very interesting game.
You can bet Stephen was there at the game taking notes.
Okay.
Yeah. He doesn't miss those games.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of going up to Fayetteville and participating in a book signing with Dick at the Book Inn, right there on the town square across from the courthouse, Pam Howell's store. And I just love that town. It's a beautiful little area. And the town is wrapped by the Elk River to the south of it. Now, I'm a canoe freak myself, and I've canoed the Buffalo River across Tennessee numerous times. But the Elk River is still on my list. I'd like to get up there and do that sometime.
Well, you need to bring Beem with you when you come, and we'll float the Elk River.
Yeah, there you go.
That sounds like a plan. Definitely.
So what's Christmas this year going to be like in Fayetteville?
Well, the town is fully decorated as it was for Host of Christmas Past, and I would say that we're going to be playing it safe and as best we can. Not eating out, drive through, I guess we do, and just try to make the best of it and stay safe.
Well, we wish you and Martha the best holidays and your family and all of Fayetteville.
Yes.
All right.
Merry
Christmas. Well, thank you very much. I've enjoyed conversing with you and Beem, and best to you all. And I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas and enjoy the holidays to the fullest, and keep in mind what they're all about.
And we want to thank Wayne Greenhoe for his comments today and for participating in the show.
And thank you to our guest, Dick Farrar Jr., for taking time out of his evening to spend it with us here and to share a little bit about his book and his life. So next week, Stephen, you're going to be gone, right?
I'm taking off. I'm heading south. Going to be down in Tampa.
Okay, so basically, I'm kind of playing around with an idea for a show for next week, and it might be where I give some of the authors in the audience a chance to call in and talk about their works in progress. I've got a couple of works in progress. I may be talking about that, and I've got my cousin. He's currently writing a memoir, and he toured the country for 20-odd years in rock bands, and he's writing a memoir. I may have him on as a special guest, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that he's done. But that's up in the air, so just keep an eye on Twitter, and you will get the info as I put this together.
And since I'll be at 30,000 feet when the time comes, I'll go head to the archive afterwards and make sure I can listen to the show. Like all of you can go to the archive, freshinkgroup.com, or the YouTube channel Fresh Ink Group, and hear those shows. Thanks again, Dick.
Thank you, and I'll leave you with this thought, Beem and Stephen, if you will. I was walking out the cemetery the other day with a preacher friend of mine, and after a funeral, and he stopped me at a tombstone, and he said, "See the year born?" I said, "Yes." He said, "See the year died?" I said, "Yes." "See the dash in between?" I said, "Yes." He said, "That represents life." He said, "It's short, is it?" So enjoy it to the fullest.
Oh, wow.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thanks,
thank you,
Dick.
Thank you, and good night.
With that, we'll wish everybody a good evening, and again, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.
See ya.
You've been a part of Voice of Indy, a production of Fresh Ink Group. Spread the word, support our guests, then find us at freshinkgroup.com, and be sure to hashtag Fresh Ink Group.